Let's look at this from the Bears' perspective. Because clearly, new regime, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, first big move, ripped the Band-Aid off of a trade that was ill-advised by the past regime. There had been some chatter in the past. There was even a story last year about Khalil Mack possibly being traded back to the Raiders, or at least a phone call was made. And I remember on this show we said, well, phone calls get made all the time about hypotheticals and theoreticals and trades that could happen. Just the fact that a call was made doesn't mean it's significant. The fact that it bubbled up to the surface, there may have been a method to that, and now you've got new coach, new GM, first order of business, see you later, Khalil Mack. That just shows that no one's sacred. When you get a change at the top of the organization, no one is sacred, Peter.
Well, and I think for them to eliminate, and Mike, I'm going to be off a little bit, but basically to eliminate about $22 million a year over the next 3 years in your salary cap obligations is absolutely huge, obviously. And in addition, I think one of the things that Ryan Poles saw and what Ryan Poles knows is that if you look at this draft coming up, what has everybody said? And Daniel Jeremiah said it to me a couple of weeks ago. On many boards, the 15th pick or on some boards, the 15th pick to another team will be the 60th pick on their board. So what I think a lot of teams believe with this draft is that you can really get fat in the second, third, and fourth rounds with starting players. And so if you're the Bears and you have an opportunity to make a trade to rid yourself of a guy who really hasn't played up to the money in the last couple of years, whatever the reason is, injuries, whatever it is, he really hasn't played up to the money. And you have an opportunity to get one of these good, young, cheap players for your team. I think it's one of those things that Ryan Poles figures he has to do. Look, I sat down with Ryan Poles at the Combine. Never met him in my life. Didn't know him at all. And I believe what you're going to see with Ryan Poles is a little bit of a new way of thinking. Mike, last year Ryan Poles spent I don't know how many days, couple of days in New York. He wasn't a general manager at the time. He was just in the Chiefs front office. And he went to New York. He made a friend, atop the New York Yankees. And he wanted to see how a storied franchise like the Yankees handles personnel, handles its salary structure, everything like that. And I think that is just a measure of who he is. He's kind of a thoughtful guy who's not going to be married to anything that has been done in the past. And with this move, I like what he has done because the Bears are who they are right now, and to rid yourself of an anchor that is basically going to be 10 to 12% of your cap over the next 2 years, and you're not sure that you're going to get that much production, relative to the money you're spending. I thought it was a good move by him.
Well, and look, this is the time to make those moves. This is the time to lay the foundation for the future. And as we see deep draft classes coming to the NFL, Sims and I were talking about this earlier. Look at all the fast guys, fast receivers, all the 4-3 guys. At a time when Allen Robinson, Bears receiver, is becoming a free agent, do you pay for a guy who's been in the NFL for 6, 7, 8 years when you could just go and draft one of these young guys who runs a 4-3 and pay him a hell of a lot less money? That's the disconnect in the NFL, what it costs to pay a veteran, what it costs to invest in a rookie. And, yeah, you don't know what that rookie ceiling is going to be, and some of those guys are going to wash out. But the financial risk is so low. Plenty of free agents wash out, too. Plenty of the money that's going to be spent this week is going to be wasted because the guys have already played their best seasons in the NFL. They're available to jump from one team to another for a reason. I always say there's a red flag. If the team that knows the guy best is willing to say, bye-bye, you should at least factor that into your decision to throw him a giant bag of money. So, this fits with what you're saying. From Ryan Poles' perspective, he's better off stockpiling draft picks, getting cheap contracts, and seeing who becomes good players and who doesn't.
And, I think the one other part of it right now, Mike, when you look at the Chicago Bears, look, they did an unexpected thing when they hired Matt Eberflus as head coach. And if you look at the work that Matt Eberflus has done where he's been, I'm not saying he's a miracle worker, he lays hands on guys and they play better. But what I am saying is that the Indianapolis Colts, I have always thought, are one of those teams that on defense played a little bit better than its talent was. And in my opinion, I think Matt Eberflus has the kind of faith in his ability to get something out of players. Okay, we don't have a first-round pick, or we don't have our own first-round pick, but we're going to have a couple of picks, wherever they are. I think 2 picks now in the top 50. And we are confident in our ability not only to pick the right guy, but in order to get him play well, to coach him up. And I think that Eberflus, look, there's no way if Eberflus is pounding his fist on the table with Ryan Poles, I would think that Ryan Poles would say, well, my coach really wants this guy, and so we'll kind of take the cap pain to hang in there. But Matt Eberflus, at least tacitly, had to be on board with this. So, I mean, look, I sense right now a little bit of a shift toward going younger and maybe a little bit more unknown in Chicago with the Bears.
And they're in the early stages of the Justin Fields contract, so this would be the time where you would spend money, you would go all in, but they don't know what they have in Fields yet. And this is why I was so stunned that Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy were fired after 1 year. When they got the permission to give up this year's first-round pick last year to move up and get Justin Fields, I just assume they're going to give these guys a shot, because when you bring in a new coach and a GM, not only is Khalil Mack at risk, there's a chance that somebody's going to come to the conclusion that, we didn't really like Justin Fields. And we know we made a big investment, but if we don't like him and we think it was a mistake, the worst thing we can do is double down on that mistake. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. All I'm saying is, when you have a new coach and a new GM, and they've never been head coach or GM before in their lives, anything can happen. New bosses come in, new bosses take over, and they have their way of doing things. And the first move for the Bears, obviously, to shed that Khalil Mack contract and the player who, Peter, I'm looking, he had 4 straight seasons of double-digit sacks. And even in his first year in Chicago in 2018, he missed a couple of games and had 12.5 sacks, his second highest total of his career, but it's fallen off since then. 8.5, 9, and 6. And last year, the first significant absences with those 10 games missed due to the foot problem. And, it's 8 years into the NFL, same year as Aaron Donald, and as I said earlier, they were uttered in the same breath at one point, and not anymore, and we'll see. And now they're in the same stadium, different teams, same stadium, Mack and Donald, and we'll see what Mack can do.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.